Well, hello there. Howdy, how are you? Let me give me just a second here, see if I can get my friend, well, he's my best friend in the UK, to be sure. Let's see here. What do I need to do to get that? I need to go here, and then I need to do this here real quick like that there. I think that will get the trick, and here momentarily we'll be joined, hopefully, by my friend David. And let's see here. It's ringing. It is ringing. Well, hello. Are you there, my friend? Let's see. I don't hear you yet. Oh, dear. Got another one of those things.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Keep going.
I pressed the wrong button. I muted myself.
I guess it would be a moot point then, right? No, wait. That's the wrong. No, not a moot point. A mute point. Hey, how are you, my friend David?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
Well, that's a complicated.
Considering.
Yeah, that's a complicated question, I think. It's yeah.
I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm always in that spot. Well, you know that I've had some health issues, in the past few couple of years, and as it turns out, I was unaware when I began this journey that you and I both had gotten diagnosed with the same thing. Although you had got a diagnosis far earlier than I did of the myalgic encephalomyelitis, ME. And then just having gotten that diagnosis, then of course after just shortly after a full dental extraction, then I ended up with this other crazy thing that we still don't know what it is. So we got that going for us, which is nice. So yeah, the new thing is characterized by lots of like neuropathy. There's all kinds of. It's a neurological thing of some whatever kind, right? Yeah. It looks a lot like, or at least like the initial diagnosis, like right at the emergency room, was conversion, right? Which is kind of a lot like shell shock or whatever. But when I, later kind of followed up and I went, hey, if you can describe to me the process by which, it woke me up in the middle of the night to extreme pain, entirely a behavioral health issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she backed up pretty quickly and went, yeah, I think we probably got to do some, imaging. Well, that sounds good. So after that, as you know, probably already, and I'm just kind of catching everybody else up, I guess, that I was accepted into the University of Washington neurological clinic, right, where they do research. And so I'm now in that program. I've done some of the very early initial stuff, but it's slow like molasses. So anyway, my approach to this whole thing has been, simply that, as you know, I'm just trusting of the medical community, or at least allopathic medicine, blindly going in, right? So, but they do have nice tools, and there's no better way to take a look at neurological stuff than using those fancy tools. So, since I have insurance here and referrals, I'm going to go through the process and let them try to see what they can figure out. In the interim, I can tell you this, that it, as always, right, when faced with adversity, and that's part of the conversation I think we're going to probably have today as we continue on, right? When faced with adversity, the first thing that I do is to go, right into Dad's lap, right? And so the greater the adversity, the more time I spend there, until at this point it is just about all I'm doing, right? Is spending time with Dad. And that has a very, a very positive effect, right? The knock-on effect is very positive, irrespective of the of the cause, and so that has had a profound positive effect. And so I guess I'll say this: I believe, through my experience, that Dad's in it somehow, right? And not that he caused it, or that I'm supposed to be tortured, right? And I've had several people kind of throw the Job thing on me, right? Like, oh, you've got some secret sin that you need to repent for, and it's like, but why would I not go there to begin with? Why, why would that not be? Oh dear, looks like I've got a little lag action going on here. We'll see what happens. It's a long time. It's acting like it's lagging. So that's very interesting. That's so funny, man. Continue.
I was just going to say, isn't it funny that when you go to the doctor, the first thing they say is, "Oh, it's all in your mind."
Yep, that's the very first thing, right? Yes, is the first neurological person, I guess, that I saw when I came back with this is right the day after I'd gone to the emergency room. And they, told me conversion. And she goes, "Oh, well, we usually treat that as a behavioral health issue." And I went, "Well, okay, but," and and so I gave her, I said, "If you can, describe to me the process by which this occurs." And she goes, "Oh, yeah," and and then every other conversation that I've had begins with something to the effect of, "Well, it's not well understood." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, because I've been reading the same abstracts, right?"
You could have told them that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, at least, however, the interesting thing is, I was a little bit encouraged, although it's taking forever, but a little bit encouraged that at the University of Washington Neurological Clinic, that they had at least, kind of, one, taken it seriously, and not just kind of blown it off, but also added in things like the position was, right, that they confirmed the diagnosis of the myalgic encephalomyelitis, so kind of confirmed that, which is, as you know, right, a diagnosis of exclusion, so you got to kind of check everything else off. So that being confirmed kind of is helpful on the one hand. On the other hand, right, we both agree that there's something else obviously going on here. And at least, right, that, like, again, from my perspective, rather than the other gal who went straight for, well, behavioral health issue, that's what conversion is, right? At least he's like, well, definitely there's something going on here, right? We need to find out what it is. And even put me into, again, the four different disciplines, including epilepsy, which, again, it wouldn't appear that I have epilepsy, right? Other than, again, the way he put it, right, is like, well, here what we can do is rule things out, right? So we have all the tests, we can test for these things and then check them off. So that's like, okay, we'll do that. So anyway, that's my process. But as I get back, like I said, to this other thing of how does it impact my life, right? So knowing that at least what we have a starting point, it appears to be degenerative and progressive, right? It is getting worse as we go along, and so trying to do the best I can to ameliorate or at least mitigate it in some way. Lots of B12 and niacin and thiamine and all that kind of stuff to keep you going. But as I said earlier, like, in my time spending with Dad, one of the things that has come very clear to me, right, is that I believe that he's in it, right, or at least he's going to use this for him, and so I don't bemoan it, other than I dislike the effects, and I certainly would not have chosen these. But I do think that, like I said, that Dad's involved, and one of the very clear things that I see then is that between you and a few other people who I try to talk to, right, I can see the way Dad works, and he nudges them the same way. Right, and to pray for the same things that specifically the Dad's in the middle of this, right, and not just for healing, which, I mean, I'd be great with that, right, but it appears that he's doing something else, and so I wanted to share with you, and it's one of the reasons I invited you here, right, so we can kind of discuss, because for those of you out there who may not know this, Dave and I talk as often as we're able, just kind of bounce things back and forth off each other, and one of the things that becomes, again, fairly apparent, and what I love about this whole, one of the things I love about this whole journey, right, is we are all having a relationship with the same creator being, and it's so clear by the light that shines through others, and the timing, right, of things, and how somebody will say something to you, it's like, whoa, where did that come from, right? So it's very apparent that we're all kind of on the same page. And so again, when I get people, this doesn't sound weird to you, right? Like, I know you want healing, but I'm praying that the Dad will use this, right? Like, so, and I'm like, no, that's exactly right. From my perspective, that's exactly right. Pray that he uses it, right? And that that it will glorify him. And so again, I wanted to share this with you, just like earlier today. I hit this thing, 1 Corinthians, and we're usually, most of us focus on 1 Corinthians 13 for obvious reasons. That's the love chapter, right? And it's a beautiful one. And if you ever want to know who Dad is and what he's like, just go to 1 Corinthians 13, and it describes love. And you read it through, but then just change that, right? Just change that word and say Dad, and say Dad is. And you will understand. you will get it. But 1 Corinthians 10, right? And very interesting at the very beginning here. He says, so starting with verse 1, it says, I don't want you to be unaware, brothers, that our forefathers were all under the same cloud. Now, again, the cloud there, he's talking about literally the cloud, as the children of Israel were taken out of Egypt in the Exodus, right? And so they were covered by a cloud during the day, which kept them cool, and at night it was a pillar of fire. Like a firsthand, like no question that God exists, right? I mean, there's no subtlety here. It's like right there, and driving everybody around them crazy. And they'd just seen all these, all the plagues in Egypt and see what he'd done. They just crossed over the sea. In fact, they're saying here, right? So they were all under the same cloud. They all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses, the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and their rock was Christ. And of course, he's drawing a metaphor there of the water that came out of the rock, right? Nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them, for they were struck down in the wilderness. And wow, is it vengeful God? But no, look, the point being, they had him right in front of them, right? There was no question about it, right there, and they still turned their back on him and were rebellious. And right during the midst of the giving of the Ten Commandments, right? Like they're like, no, don't let him talk to us. We're scared of him, right? You go talk to him. And so he goes up there to talk to him, and they're like, while we're down here, why don't we just have a big party? We'll make a golden calf and. It's like, what? Like, what are you doing? So this is why, right? And it's like having your lover, your spouse cheat on you. That's exactly what they did. So, and you can see this continuing. 1 Corinthians 10, verse 6. These things took place as examples to keep us from craving evil things like they did. Right? So don't be idolaters, as some of them were. And as it's written, the people sat down to eat and drink, and they got up to indulge in revelry. And we should not commit sexual immorality, as some of them did. And in one day, 23,000 of them died, right? We should not test Christ, as some of them did, and were killed by snakes. And he's reminding them of all the stuff that they would have known, right, from their history of the Exodus. Right? And don't complain, as some of them did, and were killed by the destroying angel. Right? Now, these things happened. This is verse 11. These things happened to them as examples, and were written down as warnings for us, unto whom the fulfillment of ages has now come. So the one who thinks he's standing firm should be careful not to fall. Right? Pride goeth before what? Right? The first and foremost among sins is pride. And so this is the first, like this whole thing, and this guy's, I'm kind of long-winded, as I do, and I'm sorry about that, David. I'll let you talk more in a minute.
That's all right, I don't mind.
But you've known me long enough to know that's going to be how I am, right? But ultimately, right, is that it's probably, although I've heard it 10,000 times in my life, right, by this point, understanding in our weakness he is strong. That it is he goes right back to the thing that Mom told me these many years ago, that all I'm trying to do is remove from you the things that I did not make, right? And the only reason it hurts is because you don't want to let go. Because these are parts of you that you built, right, that you're proud of, and what they really are, unhealthy coping mechanisms. But this is the thing here. In our weakness, he is strong. In our strength, the places that we have grown and built ourselves to be proud of, he can't use that because we have pride and we won't listen to him. It is in these places where we're weak, when I'm looking up and going, Dad, I don't know what to do here, right? That's the perfect place for him to occupy, because you're completely dependent upon him without any possibility of you setting a wrong foot, because you're not going to do it in your own strength. And a beautiful lesson to me And then I wanted to keep going a little bit further here because this is the springboard off what I wanted to jump into this conversation with you, and why specifically I wanted to invite you, David. It says, verse 13, this is again 1 Corinthians 10, and I'm reading from the Berean Study Bible. 1 Corinthians 10, verse 13 now, no temptation, and that they also kind of could use that as a test, right? So no temptation or test has come upon you or seized you except what's common to all men, right? So it's not unusual to be tempted by anyone. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you're tempted, he will also provide an escape so you can stand up under it. Right. And then immediately from that, right, I go into James, right, where it says, count it all joy whenever you face all these different trials and tribulations. Why? Because it causes you to have endurance, right? It gives you strength and it gives you experience. And the one thing I know from being a musician, right, is there is no substitute for road mileage. There is no substitute for getting up and playing in front of people. You know what I mean? And so that's mileage. That's what we call mileage. There is no substitute. It doesn't matter how well you play or how much you practice, and you should be practicing. But when because every time you play, something bad happens. And the more times bad things happen, the more times it's already happened. So you're not surprised by it and you can respond to it. And then you can, and then it's all part of the show, right? So now you've gone from, being an amateur to being more seasoned and a professional. And this is what it appears to me. And this is, I guess, what I'm offering before you and going, hey, David, this is what I come to is that because the next thing I wanted to share, right, is all of this is preparing us for where we are now, which is, and if you just do a quick Google search here, and let me do this, let's see if I can just pull this up on the screen, and you could just watch it happen in real time, right? I'll just put this up here and go, he that endures till the end, right, will be saved. And how many times does he tell us that? So the first time it was Jesus himself telling us in Matthew 24, where the disciples come to him and they say, tell us about the end. What's going to happen at the end of the age? We've always been looking forward to that, right? We've always been interested in it and devoted to the idea of eschatology. When are you coming back? Right? When is this going to be over? Because boy, do we want out of this crap hole. Right? So Matthew 24, he says, the one who endures until the end will be saved. And the number of times that this is spoken to us throughout both that endures to the end shall be saved, right? And over and over and over. And how do you get endurance? What, right? And if anybody that's into like track and field or that sort of thing, right now it's the end of the Diamond League season, and so just a couple hundred miles south of me in Eugene, Oregon, they're having their championship this weekend, and endurance, right? Endurance runners. How do you train for that? Laying around on the couch eating potato chips? Or saying, well, this is hard, it's raining out, it's too hot, I don't want to go, make it easier, right? And that's what we do. We have an aversion to pain, and we don't generally like it. And so the first thing we do is, Dad, make it easy, right? Get me out of this. Send lawyers, guns, and money, right? And that is often the worst possible thing to do, right? So here's a list again if you're going to use the evil Google thing. But I went down, it's about 5th or 6th things. There's a list here, open Bible, but there's a reference here. It says 100 things, basically, that it'll kind of give you. But look at all of these. Look at all of this, right? I'm coming soon. Hold fast to what you have so that no one can seize your crown. The one who conquers and keeps my work to the end, to him will I give authority over all nations, right? The one who conquers will have this heritage, and I will be his God, and he will be my son, right? To those who, by patience and well-doing, seek for glory and honor and immortality, he will give eternal life, right? Over and over and over, if you endure till the end, you will be saved, right? And he tells us very clearly, also in Matthew 24 right here, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. He also says, hey, the world hated me, they're going to hate you too. So does that sound like we're going to get rapture, right? Get to skip out of
We're
here.
not getting a ticket out of here, are we?
Yeah, no. Pre-tribulation rapture. Sorry, guys, that's not a thing. So I just want to, I want to steal you for that, and this is what I think. This is what's setting me on fire right now. Right, is endurance. Right, that he says very clearly, right, that the way unto death is very clear. It's a very big highway, and a lot of people are on it. And the road that leads to salvation is not only narrow, and few there be that find it, but also it's difficult. It's challenging, right? And it is not at all easy. In fact, it's the most difficult thing you can do. But on the other hand, it is not complicated, right? It is not complicated. It is just difficult. And so with that, now I'm going to defer back to you, my friend, and say, what is on, what are you observing of late? What's on your heart, and how do we pray?
Well, what I've noticed, not through personal experience, with personal friendships, the people around me, people that are close to me, people I don't know, is there's a lot of suffering that I'm friends with recently who I never knew before. A lot of people, but out of that has become fellowship. People are being brought together through that suffering.
Yep.
And,
yeah, I see abject loneliness.
When it comes to when it comes to praying, I used to pray for. It was always about praying for healing, praying, to take this pain away, kind of thing. But I think it's important to pray for endurance, to pray for strength to endure. To pray for to be comforted through the situation, to gain strength from seeking the Lord. Because that's where we get our strength from, is from Him.
Yep.
And that I guess it is about endurance, and it's, I suppose it's easier to say it when you're not suffering with something yourself.
Yes. Yes.
And when you're in pain, when you're in agony, to hear it might be a very difficult thing to hear.
It also is easy.
But I also know that. Sorry, you carry on.
No, I didn't want to. Go ahead. I'll finish up after. Go ahead.
Well, I guess when you're going through something yourself, it is consuming, isn't it? It's very difficult when somebody says to you, "Well, seek the Lord," and it's kind of like, well, I need some pain relief. Not to some worldly knowledge that's going to help you. It tends to come through seeking the Lord. So when you were talking earlier about the medical profession and you're kind of trusting in to some degree in them, God is in it, like you said.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it is easy, as you said. When pain is no fun. I mean, there's no question that it's we don't like it and we want it to go away. And I think for most people, our first instinct when we are in difficult situations, whether it's physical pain, whether it's in, financial pain, discomfort, relational pain, loneliness, right? Whatever it is, the first thing I think is that we don't want this, and take it from me. And if it doesn't happen, right? Especially again, like, my circumstances, this long-term intractable sickness, right? Then you do, it's easy to begin to feel like, what did I do wrong? Right. And why do you not hear me? Right. And do you like, is this punishment? Do you hate me? And then, certainly you get a bunch of other people who are willing to pile on, right, and go, well, you've been sick for an awfully long. Yes, there is certainly, those things can cause illness, right? But at this point, right, having spent as much time as I have in the presence of Dad, right, and walking through this, like I said, I know He's in it. Now, do I know the purpose? No, not yet. I may never, right, until it's all done. But I can clearly say, right, even having gone through the deep disappointment of saying if this doesn't go away, right? I mean, right now, what it looks like is it is again degenerative and irreversible, right? So it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse from here, and that's bad. I mean, well, not enjoyable, and certainly not what I planned for, right? But again, I come back to though he slay me, yet I will trust in him. Right? I'll go back to Job on that one, saying he's good. That's the thing I've learned, right? Is that even when I don't know what he's doing, I know he's good, and I can trust him, and that makes all the difference. He's a
righteous God.
Yep.
Yeah, because you were talking earlier about love, and he is a loving God. He is love. You know, he is the very definition of love. But before that, he's righteous, and we can't really appreciate his love and what that love means until we kind of meet him with repentance and appreciate what righteousness means, and then we can experience his love. And I think one of the things I've noticed in terms of you and your journey, if you like, is that for a while we talked fairly often about kind of this recent situation you're in. You've become much more focused. You've been on fire for the Lord, and maybe that's part of what this is all about.
Well, there's certainly a sense of urgency, right? When you and one of the things I got early on, like right away, I realized that I was about, I was going to lose my job. Right. I mean, now the help wanted ad prints before your obit will print, right? So immediately, right, I knew that was going to happen, and everything that comes along with it, right? Loss of income and all that sort of stuff, and no way to really build it back up because clearly it's a limitation, right? But I realized really quick, like really early on, that how easy things were, how suddenly, I don't know, the world became beautiful all of a sudden again when I just wasn't spending so much effort trying to fight it off, and just kind of relax for a moment, just let go. When I stopped grasping and just let go, there was this most beautiful sense of peace and freedom, right? Like, well, there's not... you can quote the old song and saying that freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose, but there be some truth in that, right? That when you let go, and I described it to Madeline the other day. I was like, there's an old movie called The Mission, Robert De Niro, and he's a Spanish conquistador in the New World, and without getting belaboring it, at one point there's a pretty dramatic and key plot scene where he has to climb up this, like they're climbing up the cliff next to a waterfall, and one of his, it's dragging him down. He's not in it, but he's carrying it. It's tied to him, and he's trying to climb up this cliff, and everybody's trying to tell him to let go of it because he will fall and die, and he of course can't let go of it because it's everything to him. It's his identity, right? Without it, he's nothing. And so ultimately, he must let it go, and he watches a long time as it falls way down. But then, right, he's free, and suddenly now he's light and can make it. And that struck me really profoundly, these many years ago.
Very.
Right, about just how clear and unambiguous that message is. That if you're clinging on to these things that define you and that identify you, and that is who you think you are, right? Then what? When those things are taken from you, then what? Right? If your entire identity is tied up in your job, right, or your income, right, of any kind, or your status, right, and you'll lose that, then what? Or right, if your relationship with God is tied up in your church or in a specific pet belief, right? Or that you think that the only way for him to show you that he loves you is to keep you out of the tribulation, right? And then you shake your fist at him and go, why? You don't love me, right? And then where's your faith, right? So what I have learned in my journey is that the times that it seems that he is furthest away, he's just quiet, but he's real close. And he's just waiting for you to stop flopping around and yelling Right? And only then can you perceive it because you're so freaked out, right? So it's like a drowning person, right? And the most dangerous thing for a lifeguard, right, is that the drowning person will try to grab them because they're desperate, and they will take them down with them. And some lifeguards have even said, if necessary, sometimes you have to knock them out, literally punch them unconscious, so you can save their life. And in some ways, I think that's what Dad has done with me in my life more than once, right? Is to hit me over the head with a brick to save me.
Well, he certainly grabbed your attention.
Yep. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. So when you suddenly go from like late stage Parkinson's, right, when that goes overnight and there's no causation for it, like that'll get your attention real fast. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. But
I think letting go is one of the things I've learned over a long period of time. The importance of letting go. Because
what's the most
carry so much.
What's the most difficult thing for you that you've had to let go in this walk?
My belief that I'm in control of stuff somehow.
Yeah, that's a big one for a lot of people.
I think that's been the most. That's been the biggest revelation for me. Is that I suppose all through my life I've been somebody that tries to fix things and fix people, and if there's an issue, especially with somebody I care about, I want to make it okay, and I want to do all I can to sort things out.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Dick. Not a clue. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
can't identify with that at all. No, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, often what I've done is I've made things worse because I've interfered rather than, I've honestly believed I've been doing the right thing, and my intentions have been, what I thought were good and or genuine.
I got a trophy in that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are hard lessons, aren't they?
But in the process, ended up messing things up.
Yeah, those lessons usually come with blood and pain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of talked about this a bit before, but there have been various things that have happened in my life where I've then it's kind of forced me to reevaluate what's important, and possessions and all of that are now way down on the list. I used to strive to try and get enough money to live somewhere nice and all the rest of it, all the things that we try and do, and then that got taken away from us 7 or 8 years ago, and then after that I was thinking, what's it all about then? And that was when I started seeking, but I wasn't necessarily seeking the Lord at that point. I was, but I didn't know I was. And then through various revelations, logic brought me to Jesus. I mean, I did get to a very low point one morning. It was in 2020, and it was with all the C word shenanigans going on, and I was kind of like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen. I knew something like this was going to happen, and it was like, but now what? We're all doomed.
Right.
And then,
oh no.
And then it was like, oh, that's it. I just felt so lost, and I felt so low, and that was when it just came to me. It's just like logic brought me to that next step, which was Jesus, and then it all made sense after that.
Isn't that beautiful?
And then I started on that sort of journey.
And it's so counter to the many detractors, right? Who, you have to be a gullible nitwit, right? Just turn off your brain to believe. It's like, yeah, no, it's not like that at all. I mean,
you've got to turn off the TV to believe.
Yeah, well, that's a great start. And, I mean, again, in another, scripture, it's that it's the glory of God to hide a thing and the glory of kings to discover them, right? That he does put Easter eggs out there for us, right? And I think in part, again, certainly this last age of man, that he does it, kind of lay things out there, little Easter eggs, and like a treasure hunt to see who has the temerity, who has the interest, right, in the things of that are important, or that you're just going to dig in and get the things of this world, right? Because he says that many are called, but few are chosen, and right that it is not usually right the brightest and best among us who really seek it out, right? Because they seek out approbation from the world, right? And when they get that, then they chase more of it because it's addictive. Anybody who's ever, if you've ever been on stage, if you've ever gotten accolades from others, you know, I mean, even on Facebook, right? The little dopamine hit you get from the little thumbs up, the like button. Yep, it's like a drug. And people literally right now are killing themselves to get views on TikToks, right? Because it's some kind of approval, right? That it's validation that you mean something. And in this world, when you get your validation from the world, I mean, clearly you should be able to see this from cancel cultures. They can take it right away from you. And and they love nothing more than to build you up only to tear you down. How many times have we seen this, right? It is a pattern because it's the way that the world is, that they want to humiliate you. And the humiliation is better when you're not expecting it, right? When you're on a high. So it's like a drug for them, right? To build them up and knock them down. It's a kind of high. And when you make friends in the world, as Jesus said, right, you cannot love both God and mammon. And again, he never said that money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money, right? That you can't let it go. And which is why, you know, people often get bent, I know, about, you know, the idea of tithes and offerings. Like, well, if God owns everything, he doesn't need your money. No, he absolutely does not need your money. In fact, he says very clearly, I don't need your money. If I was hungry, I wouldn't tell you. I own everything, right? What are you talking about? But what he wants is a cheerful giver, right? That's what he says. He wants you to trust him and not hang on to it, right? And be able to let it go. And what I've discovered, right, is over and over and over, no matter how tight things get, you know, and they do get tight, right? Never too much, never too soon. I mean, just really crazy. Really crazy tight sometimes, but he's always faithful, right? You know, it's going to happen for you. Like your relationship is going to be different. I mean, but there are some consistent things, right? That because he's consistent, and that I think all of us who have come to know him and them will be able to say that there is such consistency. There is such a profound foundation, right? This unmovable that he's never going to pull the rug out on you. This is not an NFT rug pull, right? That's not what this is. It's the only thing that you can trust in. And when you over time, right, when you realize that nobody else is trustworthy and all the promises are in vain, right? Ultimately, when you come back to the only one that you can trust, right, is the one who's there all the time. Yeah. And it's just a long and difficult journey and requires introspection and honesty. And unfortunately, for most people, all the ways of a man are clean in their own eyes. And, you know, you must repent. You must admit that, you know, that you're in error. And the beginning of wisdom is, I don't know. And it's such a difficult thing to get to for most people, right? And I have seen so many, and it grieves my heart, the number of people that I've seen that get so close to the kingdom. And at the very last, they simply cannot let go. They cannot accept the idea that they must die to themselves, that there is no value in what they were, right? And then they go, well, then why does he want me? He loves you. He gave up his life for you. It's not that he doesn't think you're valueless. It's that what you bring has no value, right? Other than your heart. That's all he wants is you, right? Everything else is nothing. And so that's a hard one for most people because it hits you right in the pride. Right. It hits you right square in the ego. Yeah. Right. That I don't have anything to bring up. There's nothing I've got that's of any value. Right. And that's
well, I guess letting go of pride, you know, what you were talking about earlier, what I found difficult to let go of, or control, but that comes from pride.
I think to a degree it does, but also, you know, I've said before, because it took me a long time to get here, the idea that that hate is not the opposite of love, but rather fear. That it is fear, that is essentially the sin, right? The first behavior that both Adam and Eve had when it says Dad showed up, right? And the first thing they did was what? They ran and hid because they were afraid. It's the very first thing that happened.
That's right.
Right? They weren't at enmity with God to start with, but they were afraid of him because they knew they'd done wrong. So the very first thing that occurred is that first they were afraid, and second they began to dissemble and to accuse the other. And I find so fascinating in that story, right, too, that God never asked them why. And yet, that's the only answer they give. He says, "Hey, Adam, where are you?" He says, I hid because I was afraid. So because, he gives him a why answer. What happened? Like, where are you? What happened? Right? Oh, well, who told you were naked? He says, well, I was afraid because I was naked. Who told you were naked, right? Well, the woman that you made, right? She gave it to me. So your fault. And she says, well, he goes, is this true? Is this what happened? She goes, well, the snake you made. Right? So no, not my fault, right? So the first thing we begin to do is to point fingers, right? And we begin making excuses right away. We begin answering the interrogatory questions about what, where, who, how, with why. We begin to try to explain it, and we can't. Right. The bottom line is that we didn't trust him. Right. And that's what we need to do, is to trust him. So, again, big shout out to Tim, who gave me this one when I was in a moment of just like sheer panic's not quite the word, but very distraught. Right. And he just kind of slapped me over the face with fear and faith cannot coexist. Choose one. And it was just like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I mean, it was like, okay, yep, exactly. That's right. Right. It came with the weight of truth. And again, that's something I love about Dad, is that there are times, and I know you've had experiences too, right? When you hear the word of truth, it just hits you right between the eyes. And you're like, whoa, that's true. Okay, yes, that's true. Right. It has the ring of truth to it. And you kind of, give it a little, like that, little ring of truth, right? And it's got got the right vibration for you. And and weirdly enough, I know it sounds silly, but I think that's actually a thing, right? It has the ring of truth. Like he spoke everything to existence, everything vibrates. The more I deeper I dig into it, the more, I agree with the idea that, everything is in motion. We do ring, and there is the ring of truth, and we are on the right vibration. We have the vibe, right? And that's why we are drawn to certain people and not to others. And as things begin to become more and more highly contrasted between one side and the other, and as they amp up and ramp up the polarization between darkness and light, right? And as they turn things around, and as Jesus said, again, that there will come a day when people who will kill you thinking they're doing God a service, because everything's so upside down. We're in this upside down world. But it will be, the contrast is so clear now between those who are drawn to darkness and those who are drawn to light, because we operate at a different frequency. And so it does seem, if you think of it in those terms, it becomes actually a little bit easier to interpret what's happening around you. Why people that you're like, how can they not see? Because they're on the different vibration, right? The different frequency. And so they literally can't see it, right? It's like a polarized light, polarized filter, right? They can't see it. They literally can't see it.
I totally get that. And we've talked about this before in terms of, bearing in mind I'm visually impaired, and I can look up at the sky and I notice things that a lot of people around me don't notice.
Isn't that wild?
And it's just it is that spiritual. It's like a spiritual frequency, isn't it? It's
it
like,
absolutely is. Yes.
Be physically looking at the same bit of sky, and I can see that it does not look right, and it doesn't look the same as it used to. But so many other people, they're just oblivious.
And I that's the way I can best interpret it at this point, and that it holds true for me as I observe. Right, that's what it looks like. That we're tuned like to different frequencies, a different radio station channel, and if you're not tuned in, then what you're going to get is static. To you, it's static. It's just right. Makes no sense. It's like, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And so, but to them, they're dialed into that propaganda. That's sweet sugar to them, baby. And so they're going to go back and get more, and they become, so accustomed to the taste of poop, right, that they can't, strawberries don't taste right. They want that poop. They don't, strawberries taste terrible, right, to them. So, they literally, and I hate to now they use the word because all the Zoomers, whatever, they're literally, dude. No, not. But no, in this case, literally, they can only receive what they believe, because of the limbic system, and it changes the input the sensory, right? To it adjusts us to whatever our belief system is. And right now, that the belief system is so in violation of what's around them, and it's entirely artificial. The only way to get that information is through artificial means, through the news, electronically. You cannot go outside and see it, right? The only way you can get that information is to have them put it in your head. You're not going to go outside, right, and see the C word, right? You're not going to see that, but you're going to see the results of people being afraid of it. And you're going to see that, right? So again, this is the place that I've come to now, and just seeing this whole thing happen, and recently more and more conversations about the discernment between one and the other, and the frustration that we have, especially our loved ones, if we have loved ones that aren't dialed into the right frequency, right? And what do we do? And I think at this point, the only thing I can say is, live out your truth the best you can. And I hate to say your truth, but live your life.
I know what you mean.
Live love, right? Express love as best you can, right? And just pray hard, because the only one that can dial them in, the only way to do that, you can do nothing. You cannot grab them by the nipples and turn those knobs and get them dialed into a new frequency. It sounds great. I mean, I would try it if it worked. Trust me, but. Yeah, don't touch the knobs, right? Because you can't.
It is frustrating, especially like you said, especially with your loved ones.
It's more than frustrating, right? It becomes not just exasperating, but you're desperate, right? Because especially as we get closer and you see what's happening.
Sad.
Yes, and you're desperate to see them.
What I'm seeing as well is in lots of areas of my life. So through my work, I work with people that are visually impaired, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now seeing people.
So literally, you are the blind leading the blind.
I am the blind, which might not sound like a great thing, but
we're just going to ditch that whole idea.
Encouraging them.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I couldn't let that joke go by. I couldn't do it.
I know. I kind of thought you might jump in there or something, but what I'm noticing at the moment is that there are people coming for therapy because they've recently lost their sight pretty much overnight after having a medical procedure, which I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Oh gosh, wow!
And again, this is that whole, there are a lot of people out there who I knew as very intelligent, logical thinkers. And they seem to have been caught. Obviously, that medical treatment came after, and
do they still not connect the dots?
So frustrating when you. Yeah,
they're in denial about it.
Like you said, it's more than frustrating.
Oh,
Pardon?
Wow. So they're in denial about it. Like they're in denial about what?
Some are, but some have realised through coming to talk about it that actually this has happened to a lot of people, and they started to question it. And I'm working with one person whose family have pursued things legally, and got a freedom of information request, and found out, and this is shocking. So in the area I live, between 2018 and 2019, there was something like 1,800 referrals to this specific hospital there were like over 100,000 referrals.
Oh my God! I wasn't way more than oh my gosh. Oh.
Yeah, and this came from a freedom of information request.
Can you imagine? I can't even imagine that that's the way you get woken up, right? By that sense of betrayal. I mean, the sense of betrayal I had to find out that they were lying to me about everything, not just like a few things, right? But about everything. That was betrayal. But to have them do it to your life, oh my gosh!
Yeah, I mean it's shocking, but and I think what I find very painful is that to us and to lots of people like us, we can see how dark the world is getting, and the urgency of people, the urgency for people to realise. But most of the world seems to be just carrying on as in the days of Noah, like giving in marriage, building, all those things. The world's just carrying on like nothing's happening. And yet it's right there out in the open. It's not even hiding. The darkness is no longer hiding. It's
No,
not even
it's
pretending.
blatant.
It's right out in your
right out
face.
there in the open, and
Yeah.
daring you to call it out. Right? It's remarkable.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask.
And what I find even more difficult is that there's a lot of people that call themselves Christian, or that are just as to seem to not see it either. And there seem to be many more people in other communities that can see it, but obviously they're not seeing it in the truthful
Right, in its entirety.
sense. They're seeing it in the worldly sense.
Yep. Yeah, and both are frustrating, right? Almost equally.
Yeah.
And in some ways, the second group is almost harder to me, right? Because that was so much of the pain that I experienced in losing so many relationships over the last couple of years was, and why. I guess I let it, happen to me because I so badly, like I said before, it's the lies we allow ourselves to tell ourselves, right? It's not so much the ones other people tell us; it's the ones we tell ourselves. And I allowed myself to want to believe so badly that they would come, I just wanted it so badly. It wasn't, even, it didn't turn out that way, but. It's enough to.
But what you've been left with is the quality.
This conversation with a friend yesterday, right? It is exactly the experience of Gideon, Zerubbabel, right? Not by might nor by power, right? But by my spirit. So the exact experience of Gideon, when he only had 30,000, he was outnumbered, 10-1, and God's like, that's too many. Yeah, well, that's way too many. You need like 300. And he's like, what the? Right, right, because it's to be certain that it's God, it's not us. We can't take credit for it, right? And that's was his interest there, right? To say this is me, right, and to know that it is again the people who seek Him desperately and with everything, right? The parable of the guy who the hired hand, even it's not even his field, but he finds. Buried treasure in the field, and so he doesn't tell anybody, but he saves up. And it takes him 20 years to save everything. Why did you do that? You saved all this money, right? You could have bought a house and lived fat. You buy this dumb field, yeah. But he put everything he had into when he found the treasure, right? And that's why I continue to seek after my Creator, even in the midst of all the agony, and I know that but it's the only thing worth. It's the only thing worth it, right? It's like, if you don't have anything worth dying for, you don't have anything worth living for, really. So,
yeah, right.
And so, but this is something I wanted to ask you about, and maybe consider because we've come to the end of my allotted time, but I wanted to. Ask you this, like one thing that I see here, and both in the U.S. and Canada, so it's not specific just to one or the other, but the number of people who are so broken and so devastatingly lonely right now that they are ending themselves and their families, right, in droves, and something that's just breaking my heart so badly. I just can't. I mean, I know what causes it, right, but it is so. It's so disturbing to me, right, and such an indication of where we are. And I didn't know if you're experiencing that, any of that near you, right? If it's people are doing it differently, because it's not always, here in America, we're known for our guns, right? But it's not always that, right? There's they choose whatever tool they can find to take.
It does happen. It does happen here. It does, and I don't know if it happens to the degree that you've noticed over there. And the other thing is I don't watch the news at all. Like it feels so toxic to me that I literally will not listen to it. But you do hear of these things happening. One thing that I would say though is I live in a town that is the epicenter of suicide. Where I live in Eastbourne, it's the most beautiful place. It's got such a beautiful scenery, but it also attracts people. And there is a kind of darkness about that I find disturbing, and also quite fascinating at the same time. But even today, when I was walking back along the beach, there was a helicopter going over, and when you hear the helicopter going over, you know why it's there. So it's I know it's quite it's sort of a morbid thing to talk about, but I think it demonstrates the times that we're in. There's so many desperately lonely people out there.
That's what I'm getting to, right? Is that we do a good job in Western society of using euphemisms and desperately doing anything to not talk about it, right? We avoid death at all costs, right? Because most people, I think, again, are afraid. They're very fearful because they don't know for sure what happens. And if anybody says they do for sure know that they're lying or deluded, because I don't know, for sure. There are hints and allegations and innuendo, but again, it's one of those about that. But I do, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's what. Again, the thing I've been praying about, right, is that. That people are so desperately broken and lonely. They are so lonely that it seems better to them to take their family out of this world than to continue in it. And that is so heartbreaking to me. And I know what causes it and where those lies come from. But if you don't have hope, if you have no hope, I can kind of see it, and that's the scary part, right? Is that I can kind of commiserate a little bit, but there is hope, right? And I find this so amazing and beautiful, right? Because I wanted to end here. We'd spoken about it before, about 1 Corinthians 13, and the description of love. But I just had to laugh when I landed on it, because for a very long time now, I have kind of, instead of calling, I have hesitated or been kind of cringe about just the name Christian, right? Not because of Jesus, but because of what it has come to mean, and that it's such a it depends on how you describe it, right? And what you see and your experience with it, right? And so while I don't want other people's actions to kill it for me, right? But in the same way that so many people reject God because they see the history of the church, right? And so, but it's like, really, you're gonna hold him accountable for the actions of people? Yeah, that seems silly. But so forever, I just picked up, for the longest time, I kind of just picked up what Jesus said. He goes, I tell you the truth, that I only do what I see my Father do, right? I do nothing without him, and I only do that. And he referred to the path as the way, just, follow the way.
Yeah.
And then I found, many years later, about the Essenes, and I was like, well, as I learned about them, I was like, well, the closest thing to describe my doctrine or whatever is kind of the Essenes, not one for one, because I don't really follow doctrine. I just have a relationship, right? So I don't do religion. But I call it the way, right? And so that's kind of how I refer to it, because that's how he referred to it, right? The way is narrow. And I just happened to notice here, when I pulled it up here, it came up, the way of love. I'm like, well, that's a mouthful, right? It's both the way of love, and I'm going to read it twice, and maybe, I don't know, 3 times, but the first time I'll read it the way it's written, and the second time just to reiterate, right, who Dad is. So this is 1 Corinthians, again, chapter 13. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I'm a noisy gong or clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I'm nothing. And if I give away everything I have and deliver up my body to be burned as a martyr, but I have not love, I've gained nothing. Love is patient and it's kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant. It's not rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never fails. Right? Which is awesome, right? But then come back and go,
Yeah.
when you, it gives me goosebumps, right? When I come back and read this
Yeah,
and
I
go,
was thinking the same thing.
and go, when I learned, right, when Dad finally got me to understand, right, you're trying to define love, and love is not a thing, love is a person, right? And his name is Dad, right? And so when I come here and go, so here, right? So if I do all these things, right, but have not Dad, right, I gain nothing. Dad is patient and he is kind. Dad does not envy. He will not boast. He is not arrogant. He is not rude. He does not insist on his own way. He is not irritable or resentful. He does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with truth. Love, Dad, bears all things. He believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things for you, because he will never fail. Hallelujah.
Amen.
It's good stuff, man. It's good.
Wow.
It's good stuff. And so in this world, right, where there's so much pain and anguish around us, and people are literally dying for love and companionship, and because they're so lonely, we have a promise that he will never leave us or forsake us, right? Never. Never. He said, he promised us, so it would be hard. He never said it would be easy. He said, in this world you will have trouble, right? He said there will be tribulation such that if it weren't cut short, that no one would survive. That's how bad, right? He promised it would be bad, but he said, but I'll never leave you, right, or forsake you. So that you can count on. He's good, right? He's good, and he'll be there with you. David,
And that kind of takes us full circle, doesn't it?
Yep.
To what you were talking about, right?
Much for your continued stalwart friendship, and you've been such a joy to me, and getting to know you these last couple of years. And thank you so much.
I feel absolutely the same. I was just wondering if I could quickly pray.
Yeah, I was hoping we both would. So yeah, you start. You dial and I'll hang up. Sounds good.
Well, first of all, I'd say our Father, because He's our Father, and Father, I just want to thank you, Lord, for this day and every day, and for the love you share with and through us. And Lord, may we gain strength from you. Remind us, Lord, to seek you first, because you know what we need, and everything will be added. And Lord, I want to thank you for everything you provide in the physical, in the spiritual. Lord, please help us remain humble, seeking you, learning from Jesus, learning to forgive as you forgive us. And Lord, please help us walk away from the temptations of this world, whether it be a lust or pride or fear. And Lord, deliver us from the evil one. And Lord, all of this in your name and in your glory. For we are nothing without you, Lord, and we are everything with you, because you are with us, in us, and you work through us. And may we continue to humble ourselves to serve you, Lord. And Lord, please help us understand where we fall short, so that we can come in repentance and faithfulness, Lord. And I just want to pray for your will to be done, Lord, in all of our lives, yes. Whether we need healing, whether we need company, whatever it is we need, you know what we need, and we don't always know. So Lord, may your spirit be upon us, Lord, and fill us to overflow, and may your blessings continue, Lord, and thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you.
Jesus, thank you. Thank you for, well, the list is long. Thank you for saving us, for saving me out of the depths of despair and showing me what life could be, and for showing me what love is and who you are. And I don't have quite the words, but I love you so much, and I'm so grateful for everything. And we need you so much here. Your children are dying of loneliness, and we so desperately need you. And so many people are so misled and so afraid. And they've been lied to so many times that they can't trust anybody. And, I don't know what to do about it, but I know you do. And so I trust you with all of this, right? With my physical ailments and pain, I trust you to do your will. With my friends who are really going through it, I trust you to hold their hearts and to catch their tears in your bottle.
Thank you.
To those who are lonely, comfort. And to those who are in pain, healing. And those who are in darkness, light. And to those who are afraid, courage. For he did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind.
Yes.
So let us not be confused or afraid. Let us walk confidently into the light. And Dad, just keep that light coming and show us. And if we even take one step off the path, push us back hard. Thank you. Thank you for hearing us. Thank you for never letting us go. Thank you for your love, your unconditional love, and thank you for relationships and friends, and for caring for us. And you know all of our needs. You know mine. You know David. You know everyone who's going to come and listen to this, right? And I particularly appreciate it. It's been a pretty small number, right? So keeping the distractions low. But bring the ones who you want to hear this, to give them courage and hope. And if you need somebody to talk to, reach out. My contact information is in the description. You can get a hold of me. I promise I'll get back with you. So
Same here.
yeah. Anyway, David, thanks so much for agreeing to join me. I know it's late where you are, but I have
It's never too late.
Yeah, I've so appreciated your friendship, and I just I can't at this point I can't imagine life without you. So where have you been all my life?
It's funny. I was saying to somebody the other day who I met recently, but I'd only ever spoken to her online, and we realised that we didn't live too far from each other, and I met her the other day, and it was just so weird. You feel like you don't. It's amazing how friendship can grow,
Yep.
you know. And when we first spoke a couple of years ago, I never would have imagined that we would become such close friends. So
Yep.
I thank you, Father, for that, and I would encourage everybody else that, you know, friendship is just so important. Fellowship is so important. You
It's
don't
crucial.
have to go to a church.
Yep.
You know, it's there. It's just reach out, and you can reach out to me if you like. I'm happy to speak to anyone.
And yeah, me too. And if you don't know, right, ask Dad, right? Like he said, like anything you ask in my name, right? He's not going to ignore you, right? If you ask with a sincere heart and you say, "Hey, help me, I need somebody," right? I mean, the number of times, like when I'm in need, and whether it's a person or whether it's a need to be met, man, instantly, right? He handles it, and somebody will call and say, "Hey, I just thinking about you," right? Watch what happens. Taste and see that the Lord is good. He's good. If you trust him, if you reach out, you trust him, he won't let you down. right?
Amen.
So, David, love you, man. Thanks so much again
I love you
for
too.
being here. And we'll do it again soon because I
Definitely.
love this. Okay, so I'm gonna just say bye to everybody now, and who knows when I'll be back. I'm trying to make it more regular, but there are things going on, obviously, and so we're trying to keep up with that. But keep us in your prayers, right? I'm sure. I will tell you for sure that since we've done this now, both David and I will get slammed this week, but it'll be a wild week for us both. So keep us in your prayers, right? Because we're for sure going to need it.
That'd be true.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, thank you so much, David. I'll let you go now, and then
Thank you.
we'll talk again soon. So I love you, brother. And
God bless you.
Yep, you too. And guys, thanks so much for joining us. And again, if you're here live, thanks a bunch. If you're coming later, again, thanks for stopping by. You can reach out all the stuff in the go to the contact information there. You can get a hold of me, and I'll get back with you quick. If you want David's contact information, I'll try to find it and add it to that, or just ask me or whatever. But I'll try to drop it in there as well. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming by and spend time. It's good to see. I've missed the folks, and so it's good to have you come by. I'll leave you with some music, as I try to do from time to time. Let's see if I can find something that's apropos. All right. How about this one right here? If that one will play. It's called Q&A. All right. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon. If not before next weekend, I'll make sure and come back. All right. Take care, guys. I can't believe the questions you ask. Are you still my friend? You should know after all that has passed, I am here to the end. And yes, it makes me feel like a fool, knowing I haven't come through for you. And no, it's not the same when you call out my name. I can't believe the things that you ask. Don't you know what it means to speak the words that you've given me, to tell of my dreams? And yes, I think that I'll be okay once I let go and you have your way. And no, I'm not afraid, I just don't know what to say. I can't believe the time that has passed, and it's getting near dark. You should be almost home by now. I know it's not the same, but I'll still call out